Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience episode number 153. If you want clarity about your life and or your business, you can schedule a one-on-one coaching session with me. You can send an email to fr@francesrichards.com. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our guest today is an author, speaker, financial coach, and nonprofit leader, Rahkim Sabree. Welcome.
Thank you.
You know, you have an impressive bio. So I'm going to let you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business.
Sure. First things first, I think everything that I do is interconnected. Foundationally, I'm passionate about financial education. And so that's manifested itself in several different avenues. Look at my hat as a nonprofit leader. Our organization is focused on ending homelessness through education. And so a big component of that is financial education. As a financial coach, I think kind of self-explanatory there, sharing what it is that I know in a way that is constructive and addressing not necessarily specific methods to managing your money, although that's certainly included, more so addressing what the relationship is psychologically or even spiritually with money and that accountability piece. As an author, a two-time author at present, and my most recently published book focuses specifically on personal finance, the financial empowerment book. So I talk about finance and finance management, personal finance management through the lens of my experiences and what it is that I've been able to either overcome, accomplish, or just kind of address through the different learnings and run-ins that I've had with individuals who've influenced my overall kind of outlook on money. And as a speaker, I use the content that I put out there, whether it's written or oral, to kind of fuel and kind of keep the fire going really around what my message is. And most recently, I think pretty notable accomplishment is having done a TED Talk on the topic. So I talk about the financial literacy gap and what I believe is really kind of a way to address that gap. And I talk about how establishing a team specific to finances, but a team in general who either knows more than you or who you can share what it is that you know with, and using that to kind of propel people forward financially and close the financial literacy gap.
Rahkim, talk about your why. I've heard someone quote, "Your why should make you cry." Talk specifically about your why, and does your why make you cry?
I don't know that my why makes me cry, but I will say that everything that I do and everything that I've accomplished as of late kind of speaks to the young Rahkim in me, or what it is that I've experienced growing up. So I think a lot of the hardships, a lot of the things that I've had to overcome or that I've chosen to go after in terms of accomplishments come out of a place of either not having, so a place of lack, or a place of hurt, right? So I talked about finance being one avenue, but I'm also very passionate about mentoring. And so my first book is specific to mentoring and mentoring strategies between the mentor and the mentee, with calls to action at the end of each chapter. And I think that when I detail my experience through childhood all the way up to recent, I talk about, what that longing looks like as a young Black male for a mentoring relationship, somebody who can acknowledge me, who can see me as me, and give me the encouragement and the structure that I need. So when I talk about what I talk about, whether it be finance, whether it be mentoring, whether it be entrepreneurship or what have you, I talk about it through the lens of my experience, because my experience is unique to me and nobody else has had that experience. But I think a lot of people can resonate with those experiences. And so who better to drive that conversation than somebody who's been on the receiving end or the opposite end of the spectrum that I'm really kind of speaking to, if that makes any sense.
Talk about your books that you've authored. Tell them the name and how they can get those books.
So the first book I authored is called Mentorship, the Playbook. That's available exclusively on Amazon. And the second book that I authored is called Financially Irresponsible. That's also available on Amazon, although it is also available on Barnes & Noble, I believe, electronically only. So anybody looking for paperback copies of that book would have to go to Amazon. I do have intentions on expanding the variety in terms of where they're housed. So looking at maybe iBooks, whatever Google's version of that is, definitely looking to expand into audiobooks of each. But at present, there's only the e-copy and the paperback.
Talk to a younger Rahkim. What would you say?
I think I have internal kind of dialogues frequently with what would be me and kind of reflecting back to, where I was versus where I've become, where I've gotten. And I think I would say start sooner. A lot of what I've had to overcome to get to this point is issues around whether or not people would view me as credible. I would definitely say start sooner and start sooner with a confidence. I've never had a limiting belief in terms of whether or not I could accomplish something, but certainly there's that fear paralysis of, well, if I do this, what's going to happen? Or should I do this? Or when should I do this? Can I do this at this time? And so I would definitely say, move forward with confidence. There was certainly self-esteem issues that I had to kind of battle through in my early and kind of later teens. And just realizing that, some of the things that I worry about at that particular point in time doesn't matter, 5 or 10 years in the future. So just, eye on the prize.
Tell us, why did you get into financial literacy or financial empowerment?
So I like that question because you draw a distinction between the two. And I often do the same. So financial literacy is all the rage right now. It's trending. Certainly a huge crisis in the world, specifically this country, is where I'm addressing around financial literacy and the financial literacy gap. But financial empowerment, that's a different story. And I think financial empowerment, and let me preface the statement by saying that the content that I put out there is for anybody and everybody. However, I think financial empowerment resonates with people that look like me, so African American or other minorities in this country, because of a mindset. Don't know the word I want to use, but we'll just stick to mindset, right? So there's an attitude or a belief around whether or not we are deserving of, whether or not we're entitled to pursue wealth, whether or not it's morally correct for us to attain wealth. And so when I think about empowerment, I think about more than just understanding the mechanics of what makes the economy work or how to save money, how to budget, how to manage credit, but getting deep to the root of, the belief of, why can't I have this? Or why shouldn't I have this? Or why do I deserve this? And if I can give you a relevant example, I talk a lot about one of my major financial accomplishments being the purchasing of my house. I purchased my house at 26 years old, multifamily, income producing. But the environment that I grew up in, I'd always grown up in an apartment. I never lived in a house before. And so although I did believe it possible to own a house one day, I certainly didn't believe it possible to own a house before 30. And I didn't even understand, the strategies behind single family versus multifamily, becoming a landlord, having tenants, and that whole process. So really the turning point for me was encountering individuals who were within my age range, plus or minus 5 years, doing the things that I never even thought of myself enough to be able to accomplish. And so once I was able to kind of see that and say, hey, you know what, like this person's doing it, why can't I do it? That was a turning point for me in moving forward. And so empowerment, because it's more than just kind of understanding the academic side of navigating finances, but also being able to apply it and being able to apply it to you and your circumstances.
And who helped you turn that corner to help you figure out that you could purchase a house at 26 and become a landlord and at the same time?
So I give credit to a variety of sources, but I think most notable of which would include friends that I had made when I moved to Connecticut. So I left New York in 2010. I spent some time down in San Antonio, Texas, and then came back up north to Connecticut, where I started working in financial services. And because, that my coworkers and my manager at the time were the only points of contact that I had out here, we developed somewhat of a friendship. And as we developed our friendship, I started to, of course, understand, based off of their sharing, what their financial situation was, this desire to have an 800 credit score, or not even necessarily 800, but good credit, because I didn't know what credit was at the time, or owning property, or things like life insurance and the importance of that, investing in retirement accounts. So I think my friends at the time were certainly foundational to making me know that it was possible. Then I encountered the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and that book that changed my whole trajectory. I was just like, wow, my whole mindset changed from being a consumer of products and what we refer to now as liabilities, and moving into focusing on the acquisition of assets, and moving from an employee mindset to a business owner mindset and an investor mindset. And so Robert Kiyosaki in that book really high level goes over the differences between, I don't want to refer to it as class, but I can't think of another word, the classes of individuals who subscribe to purchasing of liabilities over assets versus those who purchase assets over liabilities and allow their assets to purchase the liabilities for them. And once I got a taste of that, I kept going. And so I'm a big reader. I'm a big consumer of self-help and personal development content. So once I finished that book, I went to seminars, workshops, I reviewed podcasts, interviews, anything that I could consume on the topic. Really, I did. And that just kind of further elevated me in terms of my own personal knowledge, but also inspired me to take action. And then from there, the rest is history.
Talk about getting into financial services, because that's a huge industry with a lot of different layers. So talk about specifically, how did you get into that industry? Because when I heard the story and I know a little bit about the industry, I'm not connecting the dots.
Okay. So when I moved to Connecticut, I needed a job quickly. So I took the first thing that I could find, and that was a supermarket job. So I was a cashier. And one night, believe it or not, sometime around 2 a.m., a friend of mine texted me, and he recommended that I apply for a bank job. And I was like, a bank job at 2 a.m.? Like, this is odd, but I'm very, I'll call it intuitive. And I thought that just kind of the combination of circumstances that led to him reaching out to me at that particular time was something for me to take action on. And so I applied for a part-time teller position at a bank, and I got the interview. And then there were a variety of things that had happened. I mean, we experienced a crazy snowstorm that took out the power for a week. I missed my first day. I missed an opportunity to work at a particular location. But somehow in the background, things continued to move, and I ended up being placed at another location with a new start date. And so I was doing that side by side with my supermarket job because it was part-time. And then about 5 months into my role, an opportunity presented itself for me to go full-time. And I jumped on the opportunity. It was more money than I had ever made at the time. And it was like a real job. Like, it had that real job feel. And I had done supermarkets before. I wasn't really thrilled about it. So I left the supermarket. I started working for the bank full time. And then from there, I really just kind of navigated every role within the branch that I could get my hands on. I was eager to continue to climb, develop myself, learn more. And in the process, I became customer facing in multiple roles where I got to see the spectrum of how people manage their money, whether it was poor or very well. And you get to see the habits of people that have money, what they're willing to spend on, what they're not willing to spend on, what they're willing to negotiate. And in talking to them, and of course, being in a sales role or a sales-like role and offering them product, they would have a reason for why they would accept or deny what that product was. And so then that gave me more material to go back and look and like, okay, I drank the Kool-Aid, right? So I'm working in this organization. I'm thinking that everything that they have is everything that the customers need. But these customers, particularly the customers who had money, the affluent customers, they're coming in with education as well. And so they're saying, yeah, you're offering a good product, but I have a better product over here. And then they'll go into explaining why their product is better. And so I can't tell you the number of customers that I interacted with over the course of that time frame, but certainly was able to see and build relationships with some of them around how they manage their money. I was introduced to things like trusts. I never knew, what a trust was, or even the difference between the revocable and the irrevocable trust. I got to see people deal with succession planning. And so what happens when somebody in your family who has money passes away, and how does the rest of the family get access to that money? People planning for retirement, people in retirement drawing from their retirement, people selling businesses, starting businesses, the different kinds of businesses that people would start, professionals like CPAs and attorneys, and then, just your average worker. It was a huge spectrum that gave me insight into the behavior of different people and how they manage their money in different circumstances too, right? So you have people who are married with children, grandchildren even, people who are single, who are just starting out but have a high-paying job. And so just having that perspective really also kind of helped me understand not so much about the money, but how to connect with people at different places financially and understanding what their needs were and how to position at the time the products that organization had to their benefit. But that's that's knowledge you could take away and just understand. Okay, well, I personally, as a financial coach, am not a product pusher, so I'm not like married to any one product over the other. But what I can do is, based off of that skill set and learning how to interact with different people at different places, position the conversation towards helping people attain their goals, whatever that may be. And because I've seen enough in that spectrum to kind of understand where different people are, I'm able to relate with them and relate to them on their level, which I think is a huge advantage.
Tell us, what are you most grateful for right now?
I'm grateful for life. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I think, every breath that I take is an opportunity for me to impact somebody else. And as I grow my platform as a speaker, as an author, as a coach, or as a nonprofit leader, it gives me so many more opportunities to interact with people who I know and people who I've never heard of before. And hearing about how I impact them, that continues to fuel me on my mission to impact more people. So I think, the selfishness in me to that question also, I have the opportunity to live. Like, I have the opportunity to say, you know what? Today I don't want to do this. Today I don't want to talk to anybody. Today I don't want to make an impact on somebody else because I need to focus on me and my health. And I think, just having the opportunity to wake up in the morning, breathe, make that choice and understand that choice is present, that's powerful as well. So I don't take that for granted by any means. I'm certainly more inclined to help and impact and influence other people than I am not to. But I think it's a good feeling to be able to kind of recognize that you have that ability and that choice to make a difference or to not make a difference.
Talk about, Rahkim, this social cause that's pulling at your heartstring? Homelessness.
Sure. So I grew up in New York, like I said, so I actually, for a long time, became desensitized to homelessness because it was everywhere. People are, standing out there with, you know, their cups or looking for change. And eventually it got to a point where I was able to walk down the street and not be bothered by it. I mean, I would just look through people or look around people. As like, my mentality was, as long as I don't make eye contact, I'm not obligated to respond. And it's horrible. It's horrible that I felt that way. It's horrible that I viewed these people reaching out for help as a nuisance more than an opportunity. And certainly giving was central to core beliefs that I was raised under. This idea of charity and sharing what it is that you have. But if I'm walking down the street with $5 and I give everybody that's asking for change $5, well, by the time I get to the end of the street, I have no more money. And so you kind of have to learn this survival of the fittest, I guess, mentality when you're out there, where if you have excess, you give. But, when you're coming from a place of poverty yourself, you can't give to everybody. That saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So when I got back up to Connecticut, the co-founder of my organization and I were talking, and he's very passionate about human services. And we kind of took inventory of what our skill sets were. His career focus has always been in human services and nonprofits. My career focus has always been in corporate and personal finance, banking specifically. And so we thought about how can we marry those skill sets? And we decided that we were going to come up with a nonprofit where it kind of addresses his passion around human services, but I can offer operational support in terms of the structuring of the organization and helping to kind of get the ball rolling so that it's not just charity, if that makes any sense. And as I began to educate myself on homelessness as a cause and see my passion in homelessness or in the eradication of homelessness, something clicked for me. And that desensitized nature kind of went away. Where now, anytime I see a homeless individual asking for change or asking for a meal or asking for an opportunity, I can say, man, what can I do or what can I incorporate in my organization that I can help people like this in the future? And we've done community events. We do clothing drives. We do supply drives. We're working on an event right now where we want to kind of combine elements of the clothing and supply drive while also providing food, working with other organizations, using their locations for hosting so that, there's a collective effort in homelessness. But, we're also learning as we grow. And so part of that learning experience is there's so much competition for resources around addressing homelessness that we've had to kind of pivot and focus on education. And so when we look at the population of people who are impacted by homelessness, first of all, addressing the stigma that exists with individuals who are impacted by homelessness and saying, hey, most Americans are 1 or 2 paychecks away from being homeless. And if they lose their job or their primary source of income, they will very likely end up in that position. And so understanding that homeless individuals are just like you and I, who just they got hit by circumstance and they didn't have the preventative education to prevent that from happening. But also understanding, too, that the spectrum of homelessness extends beyond individuals who are abusing drugs or alcohol or have mental disorders. The spectrum of homelessness also impacts students in elementary through high school, are impacting students who go away to college and can't afford housing while they're paying for their classes. It extends to veterans who go out, fight for this country, come back and can't get services, and extends to individuals who have mental disorders or medical emergencies where they can't afford insurance or they don't know how to find services or afford those services. And so, now they're out on the street and they're trying to live. And so when you look at it from a holistic perspective and understand the full spectrum of homelessness, and understand the root of why that individual that has been stigmatized on, standing on the corner with his cardboard box, shaking a cup, looking for drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism to whatever the root of their situation is, then you kind of understand, you have a little bit more compassion for that audience. And so really, I think our mission is twofold, is to raise awareness around homelessness as an issue, because it's such an issue that people like me become desensitized to it, but also raise awareness around the spectrum that exists within homelessness so that people understand that not everybody who is homeless is someone who's abusing drugs and alcohol, or somebody who's, unkempt with, clothes that they've been wearing for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. But homelessness extends to, the 12-year-old kid who gets up early and goes to school so that he can get breakfast and take a shower before classes, or that kid who's couch surfing, right? Because homelessness is within the school system is defined as an individual who doesn't have a primary place of residence. So they can be fed and clothed, but bouncing from friend's house to grandma's house to aunt's house because they don't have a primary place of residence. And I think that all of those nuances are huge. And first of all, understanding, but secondly, addressing what is an issue.
So what milestone do you want to accomplish for your business over the next couple of years?
For which business?
Whichever one you want to talk about.
So I think for all of them, and I kind of try to look at it all on the same playing field. For all of them, the biggest milestone for me is expanding my platform. So getting in front of more people or having a larger audience who is either subscribed to what it is that I'm sharing around my progress within the different businesses and who can interact with me, right? So I might post something or share something through social media with a call to action. And my hope is that, maybe today I have 5 or 6 people responding, but maybe 5 years from now, I have so many responses, I don't know what to do with them. And so, of course, that forces change. That forces growth. That forces expansion. And I think so long as I'm creating an environment where I'm constantly forced to expand, then I'm doing the right thing. Some more immediate goals that I have is within that same, umbrella is more publications, more media, whether that's TV time, podcasts, radios, magazines. I just want people to hear my name, know who I am, know what I'm passionate about, and to rally and assisting me to assist other people. And then, of course, monetizing is huge for me. And I think, in all honesty, I can't do the things that I do without making money. And certainly in the second half of the day, right? So between 9 and 5, or, technically 8 and 5, I'm working a day job. So my goal within the next 5 years is to embrace full-time entrepreneurship. And the only way to do that is to increase my income from the outside. And so I would love it if within 5 years I can fire my boss and say, hey, what it is that I'm passionate about, I've been able to monetize and focus on solely. And so I'm going to say bye-bye to the corporate world and focus more on, growing the nonprofit, growing my speaking business, maybe writing more books, taking on more coaching clients so that I can live comfortably based off of the work that I'm putting out there.
Is your day job related to finances?
Somewhat. So I still work in the banking industry. I don't work directly face-to-face with individuals. A lot of my role is more strategy focused, specific to web-based communication, so email, chat, social media, and that slowly grows and expands as customer behavior dictates more of a need or more of a focus on communication through those channels. But I certainly leverage the experiences that I've had in a customer-facing environment. I think about 6 or 7 years I was customer-facing and, learned a lot about customer service, problem resolution, operations, balancing risk and reward, and have taken a lot of those skill sets into this new role and beyond, right? Into the role of, co-founding an organization, into the role of public speaking, into the world of marketing my books. And so I think there's been a logical, at least in my mind, a logical succession of skills that I've acquired to be able to do the things that I do today.
We can learn from successful entrepreneurs or brands. Tell us a brand or a business that is dominating that you admire and why.
I like this question. There's two that come to mind immediately, specific to the work that I do, and they're actually competitors. So I like Robert Kiyosaki as an entrepreneur and his Rich Dad brand. So I mentioned earlier that Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Reading that book really kind of got me started on this path to educate people financially, and certainly to educate myself around what is financial literacy. Robert Kiyosaki has a host of books, seminars, workshops. He has a whole training community that focuses on different aspects of financial education, primarily rooted in real estate, but it certainly expands beyond that. And I think that he is definitely dominating when it comes to public speaking and the financial education space. But a new favorite of mine is Grant Cardone as an entrepreneur and as a brand, because he does very similar to Robert Kiyosaki. He has multiple books. He does conferences, seminars. He actually just finished a book of his called The 10X Rule, where he encourages people to take massive action in terms of the belief in themselves and the goals that they set for themselves, but also in accomplishing those goals. And he articulated in that book that one of his goals was for people to have his name be synonymous with sales training, and not just a group of people, all people. And so he's like, that's a massive goal. How can I get in front of as many people as possible? And so when I think about the trajectory of my experience, my brand of entrepreneurship, I think there's a lot to be said about what it is that he's been able to accomplish. And certainly I would like to mirror what it is that he's done and attain some of the same accolades and success that he has.
So Rahkim, what is your biggest accomplishments so far in your business?
There's, I think that's debatable, just because, you know what? So I was gonna pick one, but I think my biggest accomplishment is in being able to juggle all of the different initiatives that I've been juggling and be successful within those initiatives. So I recently did a TED Talk speaking on financial empowerment through the lens of my experience. I did that on December 3rd. I published my book on finances, personal finance, December 2nd. So it was just like 1-2 punch. And I prepared for both of these things over the span of months within the 2019 calendar year while holding down a full-time job. So I think that in of itself is a huge accomplishment. For me to publish 2 books in 2 years is a huge accomplishment. And then as a result of some of these things, there's been some momentum created around that success. So following the publishing of the second book and the TED Talk, I was featured in Black Enterprise magazine, which was huge. They're a huge platform, and they wrote up a story based off of the success that I've had with the book and the TED Talk. I had an interview done recently with iHeartMedia that I believe is going to be turned into a series. So we're going to have several conversations moving forward. And based off of the feedback of the host of that show, my show was relatively popular in comparison to some of the others, which was huge for me because she had some big names show up on her show. And I don't imagine the momentum slowing down. I mean, as long as I continue to maintain a focus on juggling those multiple priorities, I think that more opportunities will certainly come my way. Yeah, I think my biggest accomplishment within my business is just as one person being able to juggle the different things that I've been doing. And of course, with the support of friends and family, and even people who just kind of found out who I am and support me from afar, that kind of keeps propelling me forward.
So what have you not done in life that you dream about often?
And I say that in all honesty. There is nothing that I have decided that I wanted for myself that I haven't been able to accomplish. or that I'm not currently working on accomplishing. And I think that a lot of that speaks to my belief in the fact that there's nothing that I can't do. And that was instilled in me as a young child from, my parents and my grandparents. Anything's possible. And I know a lot of people hear that and it kind of sounds cliche. You can do anything you put your mind to or anything's possible. But I think my parents and my grandparents in particular did a really good job of instilling that belief in me. And they also did a really good job at shielding me from influences that would take away from that belief. And so I think, the belief in myself is foundational to my success as well, because there are many people out there who would look at what I've accomplished in the time frame that I've been able to accomplish it and say, well, in advance of having accomplished it, that's way too much work for one person, or you need to, single out your focuses and do one thing and then move on to the next. And I've heard, feedback like that, but that doesn't really kind of derail me from what it is that I'm working on. If I want to do it, I'm going to go after it. And so there's a phrase that I use in my book called, or rather it goes, belief in the impossibility of impossibility. And that kind of summarizes my mentality or my approach to life. What it is that I've not accomplished yet, that I guess I dream about on a regular basis, I'm working on accomplishing. So more to come on that.
What are some healthy tips or strategies that you've adopted?
Planning. And when I say planning, I mean writing it down. I think that has been foundational to success as well, in terms of, first you got to believe it, right? First you got to, come up in your mind that this is what you want to accomplish. But the next step to that is writing it down and then starting to break down into SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, I forget what the rest are, relevant and timely, and working towards that goal every day. So I can't tell you the amount of people that have responded to, I'll just use my book as an example, with awe. When I've been talking about writing this book since early 2019, working on this book, and give people updates along the way. And I think that there are people who believed in the idea of me writing the book, but did not believe in the follow-through until they saw the finished product in my hand. And when I saw or made note of what their response was to the completion, some people were just completely wild, telling me, how proud they were of me. But most impactful on me as an individual is seeing within them the stirring of desire to work on the things that maybe they put on the back burner. How can people help you? And people can help me by sharing. I've done and made a habit of getting in every avenue that people have a platform, different YouTube videos, different podcasts, anywhere that I can have my message be shared with someone else. And a lot of times I realize that people are seeing that, they're internalizing it. They may look at it with awe and admiration, or may throw words of encouragement my way. And those are all appreciated and those are all great. But I think really sharing with other people what it is that I'm about, my mission, what it is that I've accomplished, what it is that I'm looking to accomplish in the future. Again, expanding my platform is going to be paramount in me having continued success. And so I think, more than watching, more than liking, more than commenting, but sharing this message with other people, with as many other people as possible, that would be a huge help to me as an individual, and certainly within the brand that encompasses the different businesses I'm associated with.
We've come to the part of our interview, and it's called the Fun Facts Lightning Round, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I am ready.
Okay. The last movie you saw?
Star Wars, the last Star Wars in the Star Wars series.
You relax doing what?
Reading.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
At the moment, Ari Lennox.
Your favorite dance song?
I think Wanna Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
If coffee were a food, coffee.
Your favorite month?
My favorite month, May.
And this is not a fun facts lightning round question, but before we conclude, tell us what is the best way for our audience to connect with you and support your business and to do business with you?
My website would be the best. That's just because that has links to everywhere else that you can find me, all of my social, nonprofit website, calendar app for people to schedule time with me, my email. And so my website is just simply my name, www.rahkimsabree.com. So that's spelled RAHKIMSA, B like boy, R, and 2 E's.com. And again, that feeds into all of my socials. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm very active on Instagram. My Facebook is up there. My email is up there. I have a blog up there. So anything that anybody wants to know about me, that's a good place to start.
So, Rahkim, any parting piece of advice you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yes. Whatever that goal or dream or mission that you're sitting on, that you're debating about whether or not you should start or whether or not people are going to support you or whether or not people are going to believe in you, do it. Do it without the support. Do it without the credibility. Do it. Get started. Figure out the rest later. Because if you build it, they will come. And I've seen people supported, people pushed into superstardom, specifically on social media these days, off of less worthy things. You know, all of the viral trends that you see on social media where people are, eating Tide Pods and, different dances and stuff like that. If you have a goal, you have a dream, now is the time to do it. There's no time like the present.
All right. We want to thank you for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.